Hi everybody and welcome back to Kimbo's Comfort Kitchen, and today we're going to do chocolate truffle ganache as taught to me by the French pastry school in Chicago. They are amazing. I took it online and I highly recommend it. Yeah, I'm not a pastry chef. I probably never will be, but it's sort of why I call this a disaster. Only from the point of view of the optics, when you'll see what it looks like at the end. But as it turns out, I kind of end up liking it. It looks more like real black chocolate or black truffles than the regular ones you see in the store where they're all perfectly formed. So my technique sucks. Theirs was awesome. And also my mise en place wasn't perfect, which I'm always touting to you to make sure that it's done. You'll see why later. But the end result, I have to say, I was quite pleased with. Sometimes the best accidents can be good ones. You know, like Coca-Cola or chips or Worcester sauce. These were all accidents, and I think mine was a bit of an accident too. So let's get going and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so as usual, it's all about your mise en place, your housekeeping. And in this case, especially because we're dealing with chocolate, it's important that you have all your stuff together before you start and be organized. That makes it really easy and simple. If you're not, it makes it really awkward and usually ends up being a disaster. I know, I've done it. So I've got a nice treat here. I've got some cacao, pure chocolate from Panama. This my friends brought me, which we're going to use at the very end instead of cocoa powder. I'm not sure how it's going to work because I've never worked with it before, but let's try something new. Let's see what happens. And I've got organic honey, which is a classic ingredient for truffle ganache. And I've got dark chocolate, which is Belgian dark. It's about 75%, not about, it's 75%. And I've got European style butter unsalted, and I have bittersweet Ghirardelli chocolate. And you can see that I've got them all in equal, or tried to make them as equal portions as possible. Just makes it easier to work with. And we also have heavy cream. So those are all the ingredients, and let's get started. Okay, so first things first, I've just put the cream into a pot on the stove, and I'm going to heat this up and bring this to a low simmer. And I mean low simmer. I don't want to burn it. Next. Alright, so the next step, pretty simple. I'm going to take approximately half of the bittersweet chocolate. It looks like about half. Like that. And I'm going to put that into the microwave. That's why I'm using a glass bowl. You can use ceramic if you like. But, you know, and some people, if they're using a double boiler, which some people prefer to do, I'm just going to do it in the microwave. And you'll see why in a second. Alright, so I have just taking out the chocolate right now from the microwave. And in my little microwave, it was 4 minutes. And now I'm going to pour the rest, the other half, if you will, of the chocolate into it. And I'm going to just let that simmer for a minute. I already have the cream on the stove, and it's just coming to a simmer now. So I don't have to play with this too much, although I do like to play with chocolate. Who doesn't? I'm not going to go there. But anyway, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute. And when the cream reaches its simmering point, if you will, then I'm going to add that into it as well. Okay then, so I've got the cream, which has been sitting on the stove, which I'm now going to add to the chocolate. I'll stir that in. I'm going to let that melt fully. Be right back. Alright, so I've let this sit for a few minutes, and I'm now going to use an immersion blender and start to mix the mixture. This is really where the magic happens. see it incorporate. It's actually what we call emulsifying. Okay, so technically, this is a ganache now. And I'm going to just check the temp on it. If I can get this to stay. There. So I'll use my instant read thermometer. And we are at 113, 14 and climbing. I'm going to wait a little bit before I add the next two ingredients. I want this to be around 105 degrees for a proper emulsion. And we'll be back. Okay, so that didn't take very long actually. Not more than a minute or two. Now I'm going to add the butter. And I'm going to add the honey. I'm going to add the honey. Very French recipe here. There we go. And let's go back to mixing it again. And I'm just going to mix all of this and then I'll come back afterwards so you don't have to go through the whole boring process. All right, so this has been, stop it. This has been about a minute of emulsifying, and I'm going to clean as much chocolate off of this as I can, and then we're going to spread this onto a baker's sheet with plastic. Alrighty then, so I'm going to take this whole thing here, and we're going to dump this straight onto this baker's tray that I've lined with plastic. And because it's going to spread out evenly just through natural force of gravity, it's going to set a lot better than if you put it into, say, a tub or something like that and put it in the fridge. I know it's a small detail, but at the end of the day, it is going to make a difference on the texture for sure. Don't know why. I'm not a chemist, and to be honest, I'm not a professional baker either, or chocolatier. So this is what we're doing right now, and this is going to go in the fridge for about an hour, and then I'm going to check the texture after an hour and see what it looks like, and I'll check back in with you. I've taken this now out of the fridge. It's been just over an hour. The original recipe that I started with was saying 90 minutes, but I'm not doing that. Our ambient temperature in the kitchen right now is 70 degrees, which is going to make it depending on how fast this warms up. So wanting to get this to room temperature, right now it's kind of like a sponge. That's not what I want. So I'm going to wait and see and measure this as it softens up, and I'll let you know exactly how many minutes it was before it got to room temperature, and you'll be able to see the texture. It doesn't have to be that technical. It's more about the feel at this point. And then we'll go from there. All right, so I'm going to be honest here. I am going off script a little bit in that I've let this rest for 15 minutes. And I can't find my piping bag, can't find the nozzle, so I am going to adapt, and I'm going to use a Ziploc bag. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out yet, but rather than waiting this to go to absolute room temperature, which would be give it the consistency of whipped butter, I'm actually going to take this off now from the plastic film. So, and I'm going to scoop this into the bag. Now, if I waited longer, it would not be nearly as, this ganache would not be nearly as malleable. Well, it would be too malleable. So, I'm going to do it now. See what happens here. Once I get it into the Ziploc, I'm pretty confident that then I can shape it and move it the way I want. He says with somewhat confidence here. It is warming up quite quickly. You know, the biggest thing about when you're making truffles, your enemy are your hands, because your hands are warm and they always change the consistency, which is why we have to do this in several steps. But I'm getting most of it here. So this is working out actually pretty good. It's slightly cool, as you can see. The texture is kind of like whipped butter, but not quite. But it's still cool to the touch. And I think this is going to work out fine. Well, let's see. So if you don't have a proper piping bag, this will maybe turn out to be a really good alternative. So I'm going to take the rest of the ganache and put it straight into the bag here. Yeah, that's not messy at all. Okay, so we're going to shake this down. I'm not going to close this all the way because I want to get some of the air out. And I'm going to squeeze this up so there are no pockets. And press. You know, the consistency is actually really good. It's really good, actually. Better than if I had waited a little bit longer. Now there are some air pockets in here. Now the real trick is going to be the piping. So let's set that aside just for a sec. That's not going to go anywhere. I'm just pushing out the air for the next step. And I'm taking the same tray that I just used, and I've prepped some wax paper. And I'm going to put that on there like that. Now the trick is going to be, how big of a diameter do I cut for the piping? Anybody want to guess? So let's try this. Normally it's an inch. So I'm going to do, when I'm doing a bag, it's like 2.5 centimeters. And I'm sort of guessing that that's what it is. Now, we're going to take this and form it into semi-normal piping bag. And we're just going to start awkwardly piping onto the wax paper. Or the parchment, sorry. Yeah, hello. Can you even see that? Yeah, you can in the corner. So that's about the right size. I have to do something about this sticky. I don't know why it's good. Well, let's just keep going. Okay, so I figured it out. I just made the parchment, didn't try to fold it, and I'm going to put that doll up here. Like I said, I am definitely not, if you haven't noticed, I am not a pastry chef, and my piping skills are definitely something to be improved upon. But having said that, at the end of the day, I think my finished product, you will not be able to tell what a fiasco it was. So here we go. Do one over here. I'll do another one here. Do one there, and I think we're just about done. I'm going to eat the rest. So I'm just going to shape these a little bit. These are kind of large, obviously, but I'm in a rush. And these go back into the fridge now. Both trays are going to go back in the fridge for about another hour for them to set. So you get the idea. All right, so pull these out of the fridge and let them set. By the way, you need to let them sit out at room temp for a bit because they were too firm for me, and it's going to get messy. It's going to get real messy here. But like I said, so using the palms of your hands, roll them into balls. These are actually still a little bit too firm for me to be able to roll into nice even balls. So I'm going to wait another 2 minutes. All right, so I waited another 5 minutes, and let's try this again. Yeah, this is much better. So it's all about temp, as usual, with chocolate. Well, these aren't perfect, but then again, neither am I. So I'm going to roll all of these out into what looks like, well, I'm really good at this, aren't I? You know what? They're going to look very authentic, though. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do all of these right now, and then we'll come back. I'm going to take, once they're all done, I'm going to put them back in the fridge, believe it or not, for a couple minutes. Not very long, like 3 or 4 minutes before we get to the last step. I promise, the last step on this recipe. All right, so here's the last part of my Fred Flintstone truffles, because they're certainly not round and beautiful like you normally buy in the store, but we'll call them rustic. So, last part we're going to do is like this. I'm going to take the dark chocolate and put a little dollop in my palm. I'm left-handed, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to smother them in the dark chocolate, which theoretically will harden. Now do the same with the next one, because you know I'm so delicate. And that's, oops, I'll take a little bit more chocolate, put that in there, roll it around, and cover it with the dark. So I've got semi-sweet in the center, that's the ganache, and then I have the dark chocolate on the exterior, which will harden. And then I'm going to take this and roll it in the 100% cocoa. Like this. And place this. Well, I'll put it over here. So you get the idea. So I'm going to do all of these, and then I'm going to be able to set them in the fridge, and then we're going to taste them. Well, we've arrived at the moment of truth to see whether or not all this work was worth it. And I've got the one with the 100% cocoa, and this is the one with just the bittersweet on the outside. And let's cut into this and see what it looks like. And here we go. This is looking pretty good. I love this crust on the outside, and the ganache looks amazing. Texture looks really good. Let's take a bite. Oh my god. Okay, I wish you were here. This is amazing. Yeah, this is definitely worth it. A lot of work, but again, you can see the crust. It's not as thick on this one, obviously, but let's try this with the cocoa, or with the chocolate. That's pretty good too. But you know, I gotta say, I like them equally both. So if you're willing to put some time in, it's really not that hard. Up until you have to try to shape them. But if you like this recipe, I've got others that are a lot simpler than this if you go and visit my other videos on YouTube and also at kimboscomfortkitchen.com. Thanks for sticking it out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.